David Menzies for Rebel News here in Oakville, Ontario. And folks, we have returned to the Ford Oakville assembly plant. And the reason for that is, well, to quote the late, great Mark Twain, the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. What do I mean by that? Well, you might recall our news item earlier this month where we were reporting that this incredible assembly plant that first went up in 1953 was going to be mothballed. That Ford, which was originally pursuing an electrification strategy, decided that's not the route to go. Why? Well, evidently Ford has been losing something like 132,000 US on every EV unit. And with this being scheduled for the EV revolution that is likely not going to come, well, this plant was going to be shuttered, taking with it hundreds and hundreds of jobs. Now, let me explain what happened. Shortly after the video went up, I got a call from a Ford representative in Michigan, Syed Deep. And Mr. Deep said, Dave, you've got it wrong. We are investing $2.3 billion into the plant. Won't be EVs, but it will be the Ford F-Series Super Duty pickup trucks, which thankfully Ford makes scads of profit on. And you know, folks, as they say in this business, get it first, but first get it right. You're probably saying, how did we make this mistake? Well, there were two contributing factors. One was nobody at media relations would return our calls. We paid a house call. Nobody would come out. I don't know why that is, why there are so many companies that have media relations staff that don't relate to the media, but that is the new normal. And my primary source is this gentleman right here, Dan McTague. Dan McTague was a Liberal MP for 18 years. Don't hold that against him. He was your classical Liberal, probably the kind of guy that would run for the Conservatives today, but we won't get into that. And Dan is currently the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. And as I mentioned in my original report, Ford executives and Unifor union reps were telling Dan they feared the plant was toast. But Dan, you know, first of all, I think you share my sentiment. I've never been so happy to get it wrong, because that means the plant is alive. It'll be back up evidently by 2026. There will be something like 1,800 jobs coming back to this assembly complex. Can you explain to me how your sources got the information wrong?
Well, the sources themselves are people I worked with over the years. You know, David, prior to and thanks for the intro on the 18 years as a Liberal member of Parliament, I was also a public relations specialist with Toyota Canada.
Yes, you were.
So I did a lot of media with the industry. And it was those sources that had indicated that there was trouble with the plant. Not only was the Ford Motor Company not going to go down the road of EVs, which a lot of companies were accepting massive amounts of government money, especially countries like Canada and the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act, but they felt that the timing had been lost on the 250.
You are questioning still the viability of this plant, but what do you say to the fact that $2.3 billion is currently being invested?
Well, I think it's very good news, and I'd like to be wrong on this one. I definitely hope my intel is incorrect. I'd like to see this plant stay open. And there's personal reasons as well. My father-in-law worked here for nearly 50 years, back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s. It's an important part of commitment by a company to maintaining manufacturing in Canada. Something that could very much be under pressure again as we head towards yet more negotiations. And if we're to take the Trump administration's early comments, even before they take over, things like this are going to be very much right front and center. And really, a company's decision is based on consumers losing money, their investments, and of course, sentiment. Politics has everything to do with it. When we import, or rather we export 90% of all the vehicles we manufacture, according to the Canadian Automobile Manufacturers Association in the United States, we're really, in a very difficult position. We can provide some of the best incentives to getting those vehicles built, but when it comes down to it, decisions made in the United States that have to be for the United States, especially with the new administration, means that we have to up our game. That doesn't mean we're vulnerable, but it does mean that any certainty that we think is going to happen in the next 10 to 12 months could be upended in a matter of days.
And Dan, I want to get your views on the big picture. I think the way the Oakville plant was sort of going down a road of jeopardy was this commitment to making EVs. Ford has been severely burned, bottom line, with their EVs, such as the Mach-E and the Ford F-150 Lightning. And I want to get your perspective on, if we look at the Justin Trudeau Liberals and the Doug Ford PCs and the Department of Plenty of Blame to go around, they are investing tens and tens of billions of dollars for gambling on an EV revolution that might not happen. These are expensive vehicles. Canadians can't afford them, don't want them. In fact, when it's cold weather, that's another big issue in terms of performance. Are we going down the right route?
David, just 2 weeks ago, at Canadians for Affordable Energy, I wrote an op-ed. It appeared in a few places, Western Standard and a few others. And I said to them, I pointed out the very simple fact that electric vehicle mandates don't work in Canada. You're not going to force people to drive something they don't want. Even if you take away internal combustion engines, you see a lot of vehicles like that 2009 or that 2010 still on the road, and you'll see them in the next 20 to 30 years. I'm not saying it should look like Cuba, but my goodness, when you have an idea that says, yes, we're going to force everybody in these vehicles, and then suddenly the United States says no more EV mandates, you know that you're up the creek without a paddle. And in this case, I think we did not look before we left, as Jean Chrétien, my boss, used to say many years ago. And that's clearly what's happened. We've put billions of dollars out. Northvolt is going bankrupt. It has gone bankrupt. It filed for Chapter 11. Ford has walked away from it. Stellantis isn't moving. Volvo is not happy. Mercedes not. Europe is in decline because of this stuff. So, look, we've invested trillions of dollars into the great net zero fantasy. And the reality is that we're getting back a significant dose of reality in terms of our politics, in terms of our economics. And these are companies that are for profit. They need to make money. If they don't make money, they're out of business. And Toyota around the world saying, we have a solid state battery. It will completely get rid of the need for lithium battery. Let's let technology move first, not policymakers trying to be trendy.
But the bottom line, folks, I think we assume this plant, the old joke about Ford being an acronym for found on road dead. Evidently, that is not the case. As we said before, never been so happy to get it wrong. I think the Super Duty trucks are coming back here, along with 1,800 jobs. So there will indeed be a Ford plant in Oakville's future. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Folks, I know you love it when Rebel News brings you the other side of the story, but the fact is, we need your help. Unlike the mainstream media, we do not receive a nickel worth of funding from the Justin Trudeau Liberals, nor would we accept it if it was ever offered. So please go to rebelfieldreports.com. That's rebelfieldreports.com. And if you're able to, kindly make a donation.